All right, let's get into it. We're heading deep into the mountains of Uttarakhand, to a small, devout village in Puri. This is a place where ancient beliefs and family traditions, well, they're everything. But as you're about to see, sometimes the deepest, darkest evil has nothing to do with folklore and everything to do with the human heart.
See, this is a story about a family whose faith gets pushed to the absolute breaking point. They truly believed their gods would shield them from any evil imaginable. What they never, ever imagined was that the real evil was already living inside their home.
So, who exactly are we talking about here? Who is this family at the center of it all? Well, on the surface, they look like a picture-perfect postcard of a simple, happy life in the mountains. First up, we've got Gagan. He's a soldier in the army, a real man's man. Then there's his wife, Matu, a totally dedicated mother to their two young daughters. They'd actually just moved back from the hustle and bustle of Delhi to their quiet, ancestral village. And let me tell you, faith was the bedrock of their lives. They were devout worshippers of their Kul Devi, which is this kind of ancestral guardian deity, praying every single day for peace and protection.
But that peaceful existence, the one they built on faith and family, it's about to be completely and brutally shattered. This right here, this is the moment that everything changes.
So here's the official story, the one that everybody in the village believed. One rainy morning, Madhu, who was pregnant again, by the way, and her mother-in-law were taking their daily walk to the temple. The mountain paths were all slick and muddy from the rain. And the story goes that one of them slipped, probably grabbed the other for balance, and tragically, they both fell to their deaths. Just a horrible, horrible accident.
But there was this one detail, one little thing that just didn't quite fit. When Gagan and the other villagers recovered the bodies, they found this strange, deep wound on the right side of Madhu's chest. It didn't look like something you'd get from a fall.
Now, what's really interesting is how quickly everyone explained this away. In that part of the world, it's not uncommon for animals like jackals to scavenge. So the villagers and Ganlan de Moye, they just kind of shrugged and said, oh, an animal must have gotten to the body. It was a plausible enough explanation, right? It let them move past that one unsettling detail.
But the family's grief doesn't just fade. Instead, it starts to morph into something else entirely. As they're trying to heal from this awful tragedy, a whole new kind of terror begins to unfold right inside their own home.
So Gagan does the honorable thing. He quits the army, a job he loved, so he can be home to take care of his two little girls. But that sacrifice doesn't bring him any peace. No, instead, his grief just curdles into this dark, ugly resentment. He gets irritable, angry, and he starts to look at his own kids like they're a burden.
And then, this is where the story goes from tragic to just plain terrifying. Gagan notices a mark on his older daughter's chest, on the right side. Can you imagine the horror when he realized it was in the exact same spot as that mysterious wound on his dead wife? The connection was impossible to ignore, and honestly, absolutely chilling.
And that mark? Oh, that was just the beginning. The little girl's behavior becomes more and more disturbing. She starts screaming in the dead of night. Her body seems to twist in these unnatural shapes. Sometimes she'll just stare at a blank wall for hours. Or she'll violently, constantly bang her head against the kitchen doorstep. It's so clear that something is terribly, terribly wrong.
Gagan is completely desperate. He throws modern medicine out the window and turns back to the ancient beliefs of his village. He's convinced some kind of supernatural force is at play, so he takes his daughter to the local priest.
He brings his daughter to the priest, just begging for an answer. This is a man who's seen combat, but what he's seeing now defies any logical explanation. He just needs to know what has taken hold of his child.
The priest looks into the little girl's eyes, he begins his rituals, and after a moment of what I can only imagine was intense spiritual conflict, he speaks a single, chilling word, Masan.
Now, for those of us who might not be familiar, a Masan is not your average ghost. In the folklore of that region, it's a particularly dangerous and vengeful type of spirit. It doesn't just possess someone for fun. A Masan takes over a body for a very specific, powerful reason, usually tied to some kind of injustice or revenge, and they are notoriously difficult to get rid of. The priest's diagnosis basically means this family is in mortal danger.
And this is where the entire story just flips on its head. The exorcism begins, but the spirit they're all trying to cast out, it turns out it's not the real monster here. The truth is far more human and so much more horrific. Right in the middle of all the chanting and chaos of the exorcism, the priest notices something crucial. He looks over at the younger daughter, and she's not staring at her possessed sister in fear. No, she's staring at her father, Gogin, and she is absolutely terrified of him.
And then it happens. The possessed daughter speaks, but it's not her voice. It's the voice of her mother, Maru. And through her daughter's lips, she reveals the devastating truth that changes everything. It wasn't an accident, she says. It was murder.
And with that one word, murder, the real story of that rainy day comes flooding out. Speaking through her daughter, Maru's spirit tells everyone what really happened. Gagan, who was obsessed with having a son, had confronted her on that path, furious that she might be pregnant with another girl. When his own mother tried to step in and defend Maru, he shoved her off the cliff, and when Maru screamed that she would tell everyone, he stabbed her in the chest, there's our mysterious wound, and then pushed her body over the edge to stage the whole thing.
And you see, this wasn't just a sudden snap. Maru's spirit reveals this deep, festering well of resentment that had been building inside Gagan for years. He desperately wanted a son, not more daughters. He was bitter about his inheritance, completely convinced his father favored his brother, and in the end, he blamed his entire family for trapping him in a life that he absolutely hated.
With that horrifying confession just hanging in the air, the supernatural horror story instantly transforms into a very real-world crime scene.
As his darkest secret is laid bare for everyone to hear, Gagin just panics. He makes a run for it, trying to escape, but it's too late. The villagers, who now know the unbelievable truth, they grab him, they hold him down, and hand him right over to the police. There's no escaping justice now.
And what about the two little girls, the real victims at the heart of all this? Well, thankfully, their story has a better ending. Their uncle, Gagan's brother Sushel, he steps up and takes them in, giving them a safe, loving home far away from the father who betrayed them in the most horrific way possible.
You know, this whole story started with what looked like a ghost, a curse, a mazian. But in the end, that possession, it was really just a desperate cry for help. It was the only way for the truth to finally come out. And it really leaves you with a haunting question, doesn't it? How often do we look at real-world horrors and just blame them on monsters from folklore when the real monsters are standing right next to us?